Hi everyone. Good evening and welcome to the session Decoding Your Hormones with Dr. Ameya Kanakia. And today we are going to discuss about common problems which women face during their entire lifetime. She is a gynecologist and she is also a menopause specialist. So let us hear a few things from her practice, what she sees in general on day-to-day basis and what are her experiences, and I hope you get to learn about managing your hormonal issues really well. Hi Dr. Ameya, please tell us about
Oh, hi. So I'm Dr. Ameya Kanakia. I'm a gynecologist, and 1 second. Yeah. And I practice in Mumbai. I've been practicing since I think the last 15 plus 16 years, and I mean, throughout all of these years, different kinds of women with different kinds of problems. And I think as we also match, as I myself, mature into, I would say, a mature age, we start understanding the problems that women are also facing, and the kind of medical and otherwise, medical and other problems that women are facing. And I think the empathy just keeps on improving while I'm treating these women. uh, I mean, these the problems that women have concerning gynecology, they literally start from younger age groups. Since the time they start their menarche, uh, young girls coming with PCOS, with period irregularities, heavy bleeding, young girls, young girls who've just gotten their periods coming with heavy bleeding, up to PCOS and other serious issues as well. Getting into childbirth, which is the primary reasons why I chose obstetrics or gynecology, because it's one branch where people are happy when they come to the hospital. So I that's also a passion of mine. So obstetrics, or the delivery part of it, definitely a passion of mine. But I think menopause or midlife is as an area, is something which is literally ignored by women themselves, by doctors as well. So I get so many patients who tell me that they went to their doctor, they told her or him that they have been getting a lot of mood swings, and they've been getting some hot flashes. They feel really hot, and they were told that it's a phase of life. It's here in menopause maybe, so it's a phase of life. It'll last for a few years. It'll go away. And I mean, it just meant, reading between the lines, is that you kind of just go through this phase right now, and you kind of just manage through it, which is not fair, which is definitely not fair, that people, women, bear through, or go through all of that time in their lives with those symptoms. So I think slowly women are understanding the issues that they face in their menopausal transition, and we doctors are there to help them out. A lot of menopause specialists are there who understand these issues now, and who offer solutions for women to solve these problems as well. So it's been a nice journey so far, and it's nice to help women understand their problems and give them solutions to manage them.
Yeah, as you said, as we keep practicing, especially about you, when you practice and you see patients every day, as we are growing, we are also relating to them.
Yeah,
As you
actually.
rightly said, like when my mother used to say, I used to feel, Arey, what's the big deal? I didn't understand. But now when
Right.
I see patients, multiple people, that too with different intensities, I can actually relate. It's not a small problem at all.
True, true. One small example I give while saying this, that when I was before my pregnancy, so we all give iron and calcium tablets for women to have during their pregnancy. And some women used to say, "Oh no, I get a lot of gastritis with this iron. I don't want to take it." And I used to be like, how can you do that? You have to take it, because you're losing. You need that increased iron during your pregnancy and all. And I wouldn't say I was stern, but I used to say, no, no, you have to take it. You take it with we'll have some milk later, this, that, some solutions I used to give them. But when I got pregnant myself, I realized how difficult it is to take that iron tablet. So, somewhere you feel, oh my God, I'm so sorry for all of those women whom I forced them to take those iron tablets. Of course, it was for their well-being and for their good. But then when I got pregnant, I realized, oh, how much gastritis it causes. So now whenever patients come and tell me I can't manage it, I say that's okay. We'll find some other solution for it.
Hmm.
So, small things, but they actually end up making a difference.
Yeah.
So somehow you learn throughout your own life as well, in your own life journey as well.
I'm sure you see a lot of young girls as well, right, with hormonal issues. So,
Yes.
what is the most common issue you see in your clinic?
Most common issue among young girls is the delayed periods that they come up with. And
Hmm.
I will also tell you the most common reason for all of these things. Yes, medically speaking, it's PCOS, is that we can talk about that. But the lifestyle that these girls have is so, I mean, it's so difficult and so unhealthy. For these girls who come with these issues, I send them home without medications with just one whole page of lifestyle changes that they should do in their lives. So, a basic thing I'll tell you, sleeping timing, waking up timing is something which is amiss in at least 70 to 80% of these girls. They are sleeping sometime around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. A lot of them are on their mobiles till then, and then they either wake up late, which also, and then tell me, no, no, I get my 7 hours of sleep, but it's a very skewed timing when they are sleeping. Others are there who say that I have to get up in the morning because I have to go to my workplace or my college or wherever. So either the sleep quantity is less, or even if the sleep quantity is okay, the sleep quality is extremely poor. And there are some girls who just changed this one thing in their life, and then they started feeling better energy levels, their periods slowly started getting normal. So this is like the most common thing is the irregular periods that women, that girls, young girls, I would say, face. And changing their lifestyle really makes a big difference in their disease
Lifestyle is the
cycle.
major factor
Yeah,
for these
absolutely.
things you say.
Absolutely.
And do you think it's become more common now to have these problems? Like
I
a few
think I
years
would say
back,
that.
it was not that.
It, so I would say that go back to maybe, about 10 years ago, when mobiles were not so common, when staying up was not such a common thing. It was a little better, but now, data is so cheap, it's available, everybody uses it. And I think that's one major thing that people are facing, women are facing. Another thing is about the food habits that these girls have now. I mean, I practice in Mumbai, so every nook and cranny corner has a vada pav ka thela. So girls go to college without having anything in the morning, and then their first meal in the day is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if they say, how about, if you feel hungry, oh, I have a samosa pav or a vada pav. So the unhealthy food habits,
Yeah.
extremely common. And and again, I would say, when I'm going back to many, many years ago, when we were young girls going to school, college, the availability of junk food or this kind of food was not as much as it is today. Or
Yeah.
I would say it was priced at a higher price, or for us, it was at a higher price, or it was not so common. Again, there were no Swiggies and Zomatos. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
ordering food late at night at home was also something which was unheard of. So
Yeah.
I would say that the diet is really getting poorer and poorer.
Yeah. For us to spend 2 rupees extra for some packet of chips was also a big deal. We had to save it. It was
Right,
not
right.
that easy, right?
True, true, true.
Yeah. So, what do you think these people have to focus on? Like, should they get a blood test done, or should they just see a doctor? At what point they should see a doctor?
So I think first of all, when you start getting when your periods start getting irregular, they should. I mean, this awareness has to be there amongst women, that girls, that they have to correct their lifestyle. That is one. Another thing with PCOS is that it's both sides. It is overdiagnosed at times, it is underdiagnosed at times. So when I say overdiagnosed, there are times when girls go to doctors, and just one sonography report pay, it says looks like PCOS, and then they get labeled as PCOS. So before actually labeling them as such, they need to understand that it is something which is, it's a lifestyle disease, basically a lifestyle syndrome, I would say. And that negative, so like for example, we changed PCOD to PCOS,
Yeah.
because the disease has a negative connotation. So just yesterday I had a patient who said, no, no, but I have PCOD, right? I don't have PCOS. So and people say the other way around also, no, no, I have PCOS, I don't have PCOD, right? And I tell them, oh, it's the same thing. Like they say, oh, is it the same thing? So we have tried to change that negative connotation with that by changing disease to syndrome. And I think that should come for these girls as well. The correct diagnosis of PCOS is very important. It's one of the two of the three features, either a sonography showing PCOS, or they should have irregular periods, which shows anovulation, or the third thing is any kind of features of hyperandrogenism, or like, which means hair loss or male pattern balding, a lot of acne on the face. So two out of these three features have to be there to diagnose PCOS. Sometimes girls come to me with a report showing, oh doctor, the first thing they say, what have you come for? What's your problem? What's the issue? I have PCOS. And how do you know that? My sonography report says so. So, before jumping to the conclusion, it's important for that correct diagnosis to be made as well. And once that correct diagnosis is made, the focus has to be on changing your lifestyle before jumping to just contraceptive pills or hormones to regularize your period. So I think that mindset shift should come both in doctors and in patients to understand this issue correctly.
Yes, yes. Many people think if I go to doctor, they'll start on hormonal pills, and they don't do
They don't
either
come
of both.
right.
They don't even correct their lifestyle nor the other
And
way
they will come when they want to conceive. When they get older,
around.
they
Yes.
want to conceive, and then they think that, oh, now I need to correct this because I need to conceive.
Correct. So when you mentioned like 2 out of like three things for PCOS, so even if they don't get a test, we can actually conclude, like we can at least predict that they have PCOS. Yeah.
Yes. So
So
there
it's
are tests which help you to clinch the diagnosis. So if you do a FSH, LH hormonal tests, the ratio is 1:3. So these are tests which are additionally helping us to understand that they have PCOS. But more than that, it's the diagnosis can be made even from the clinical features and a simple sonography. Then going ahead, when we know that yes, this is PCOS, then diagnosing whether they have insulin resistance by doing their blood sugars, their fasting insulin levels. All of these things help to manage the PCOS better, but they may not be required to just diagnose the PCOS.
okay. So what other things you recommend them to see a doctor apart from PCOS? Like as you said, irregular periods is one thing.
Correct.
What else they can see in themselves, notice in themselves?
For PCOS?
For anything, for
For
to
anything.
see a
So another
gynecologist.
another common issue that women come for is vaginal discharge, or
Correct.
vulval itching, vulval discharge, all these infections. So that is something that women should, that's something that they should know about. And I would say most of these infections are because of women wanting to, maintain extra hygiene. So, they start, they use a lot of, they'll use soap, they'll use water to clean their intimate areas. And while they do that, they're actually washing off the good bacteria that, the body is actually harboring to protect the vaginal area. So that is something, again, some kind of understanding or some kind of awareness that women should have, that some discharge is normal, that you don't need to clean excessively with water, and you don't need to clean every time you're going to the washroom to pass urine. You don't need to excessively wipe your intimate area and keep it absolutely dry. Yes, it has to be dry, but by using some cotton underwear, or by not using too much water and not wiping it excessively is what they should avoid doing. And again, when you speak of this being more common, as is it becoming more common now, I think the usage of Western toilets with those jet showers, this is what I always say, that is something which has made this condition, I think, a little more worrisome than it was before. That easy availability and that extra pressure that the shower puts, I think that's one of the reasons why these things are also getting more and
Yeah.
more
So
common.
you recommend not to use like too much of pressure and not to use like
You
chemical.
don't need to, when we say no, when these girls come with all these issues, they say, no, but how come I had an infection? I keep myself so clean. I maintain so much hygiene, which means they're excessively cleaning the area. They're washing off the bacteria. So your vagina is a self-cleaning organ, and you should let it be and not mess too much with it. That's a simple thing that you can
Correct. So
Uh,
there's no need of using all these vaginal
no, no
wash
need.
and
Absolutely, absolutely,
okay.
absolutely.
And also nowadays infertility has become very, very common.
Quite
Why do you
common, yes.
think like it's increased like infertility?
So I think two things. Yes, it may have increased because of the lifestyle that we are leading. That is one. Secondly, a lot of patients today come ahead and ask for solutions for their infertility. Probably it was common before, but so much of availability of treatment was not available. So
Mhm.
both ways, people are getting more aware that yes, they know that they have more and more solutions for their infertility, and again, the lifestyle is also making infertility a little more common than it was before. So both ways are adding to the patients which are coming to the OPD with these issues.
Yeah, so for infertility, one is definitely the PCOS, which is
Yes,
causing. What
yes.
are the other factors which can cause infertility?
So it's like I always tell patients, it's like making tea. You need to have all the ingredients. So you have to have the tea leaves, you have to have the sugar, you have to have the water and the milk. Only then you can make tea. So similarly, you need this needs contribution from both the partners. Again, very often the woman is blamed for the infertility of the couple without even. So sometimes patients do come, and when I ask them, "Did you get your husband's test done?" The answer is he's not ready to get the test done, when all the tests for the woman are clear, but the husband just simply refuses to get his semen test done as well. So it has to be from both sides. One is certain blood tests in the female, a sonography of the female. We also need to check if the tubes are open. So simple things. First of all, she has to have, or she has to ovulate every month for for conception. That is one. Second thing is that the tubes have to be open. So we have the uterus, we have fallopian tubes on either side, and from which the egg is coming inside the uterus. So those tubes have to be open from both sides. That has to be checked. The capacity of our ovaries to produce eggs, or the quality of eggs, has to be good coming from the ovaries. And the husband also, or the partner also, has to have a good semen quantity, sperm quantity, sperm motility. All of these things also have to be there in order to result into into a conception. And
Okay.
apart from this, although the most difficult infertility to treat is a kind of unexplained infertility, when everything is fine, and everything is fine. She's ovulating well, the tubes are open, the semen quality is good, yet the couple is not conceiving. So probably there are some kind of autoimmune factors which are at play there. We don't know the reason. So that is one type of infertility which is little difficult to treat than the other types as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
these are the most common causes that we have for infertility today.
Okay, so mainly, if a couple is going through infertility, the best thing, first thing they have to do is see a doctor to know actually what is the cause.
Right, right, right. Again, when to see a doctor is important. So, in case the woman is younger, so it mainly depends on the woman's age, not really on the man's age. So, the woman if she's, below 35, or theoretically, textbooks say below 30. So, if you are not able to conceive after 1 year of regular unprotected intercourse, that's the definition where we use. So, if there's no conception within a year of intercourse, that's the time when they should see a doctor. If the woman is slightly older, or she has other issues like endometriosis, or PCOS, other things, then if they're not able to conceive within 6 months, then it's a good time to see the doctor rather than waiting for a long time
Yeah,
and coming late. So the timing also plays an important role.
yeah. Many times I see people who tell that they've seen some videos or they're just doing some, they're going to some,
Correct.
they don't know what is the cause of
We
infertility.
don't know what's the cause.
Yeah,
And
they just
when they
keep,
come, finally, when they come to the infertility clinics, or these or to the gynacs, the time is that, already the woman's
yeah.
egg capacity has gone down, ovarian reserve has gone down. So then it becomes more and more difficult to treat that patient.
Yeah. Also, if
Correct, correct,
sometimes, if there is some tumors or something, it goes
correct, correct.
unrecognized,
It
right?
needs to it needs to be identified and treated as early as possible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also, when we spoke about lifestyle and factors, I keep seeing these reels on Instagram telling that these are hormone disruptors. It might be perfume or some makeup and everything. Do you think really they affect?
So
How?
I see what I feel is that we typically say that, and it's a typical very common joke you must have heard of. Patients will come and ask us, "Ki, is this tablet safe? Are you sure this will not cause any kind of issues?" And the same patient will go out and eat pani puri from somebody who's wiping his nose and wiping his sweat and giving pani puri from the same hands. So see, I mean, you there are some things which you can change, some things which you cannot change. There are probably immune disruptors or whatever hormone disruptors around us in the air that we are breathing. But I mean, unless and until we stop breathing the air or go to a place which is absolutely pollution free, we cannot change that. But there are simple things we can change. I mean, something simplest which we can change is learn to carry a water bottle when you're going out and avoid buying water from those plastic water bottles. We keep on hearing it. Plastic is something which has these EDCs. So rather than saying that, oh my God, how do I avoid breathing that air which is polluted? Carry a bottle, a steel bottle with you, a glass bottle with you, and avoid drinking water from plastic water bottles. These are things you can change. So whatever you can change, you start changing them. Whatever you can't change, you can't change. And we never know, right? See, these things are yes, they have these they've been studied, and they have these issues, or they have these EDCs which are there. But how much importance do you give to that, and how much you bother yourself with it is what is important.
Yeah. Being a naturopath myself, I won't tell people like don't use makeup, don't use any products like that, because that is like
Right.
day to day, it's become a need now.
Exactly.
And also they ask like which pan to cook in. I first see what are you eating, then think about the pan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, I mean, if you're going to order from the restaurants from Swiggy, Zomato 3 times a week, we don't know what pan they are using, what oil they are
Exactly.
using, what
Yeah.
vegetables they are using. So rather than that, start cooking at home. That's the first step, rather than thinking about which pan to use.
Yeah. Sometimes, as you said, there is unexplained infertility. We don't know the cause, right? Like when we speak in functional medicine, we always tell about gut health. We tell that
Something
gut,
very important, Dr.
yeah,
Priya.
the gut can help with estrogen dominance if gut health is not right.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
also like cholesterol, which is responsible in the formation of hormones. If that is not like good cholesterol is not sufficient, then that could be. So there are many factors, like as you said, lifestyle is a very important
It's a
factor.
vast thing, so many things which it includes.
Yeah, but usually what the people do, they visit a gynec, they go to all mantra, tantra, everything, and they
Yes.
come to us at last thinking that I've taken enough of tablets, so tell me something
Now
natural.
tell me something. Right.
So that
Yes.
has been a very long time where nothing can change.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, let us talk about menopause as well. Like, what is the age where people start to have symptoms?
So if you look at the average age of menopause worldwide, it is 51 or 48 to 51. Lots of studies done in India which point to the age of menopause in Indian females to be at 46. So it's a little earlier than the Western counterparts. And perimenopause, or the transition or the changes towards menopause, can start sometimes 4 years or sometimes even 10 years prior to the actual menopause. So, if we consider the age of menopause at 46, which is an average age, women can start having their perimenopausal changes as early as 36 years of age, doing the maths.
Okay.
So, we need to be aware of those things at least around the age of 40, and whatever you're going through could be something that is perimenopause. And yes, 45, 46 could be when you can expect your menopause. Anytime before 46, 40 to 46 is what we call as an early menopause. Anything before 40 is what is called as a premature menopause, or ovarian insufficiency, premature ovarian insufficiency. So that also needs to be addressed, or people should understand that, this is something which is abnormal and where you definitely need treatment.
Okay. Like apart from irregular periods, what else can they notice to understand it as perimenopause or premenopause symptoms?
So many things, because estrogen has receptors all throughout the body. So a lot of bodily systems are affected. The changes or the symptoms can be different for different females. Someone may notice hot flashes. Someone may notice excessive fatigue. For some, it could be mood swings, could be brain fog, could be gut issues. You spoke about gut. So gut or digestion changes because the gut bacteria also changes depending on estrogen. When estrogen goes low, so that is something. So some women start having constipation around that time. Joint pains and bodily aches and pains, stiffness of the joints. These are some things that people notice. Vaginal dryness could be there. Loss of libido or low libido could be there, which some women might feel. Skin starts changing. So when we talk of menopause and skin, typically people think of wrinkles. But it's not always wrinkles. Your skin can get more and more dry. There could be pigmentation on the skin, which was not there before. So even hair texture, hair becomes more dry, frizzy in around your menopause time, because all of these systems, all of these things are dependent on estrogen, progesterone for their functioning. Sleep is something which is disrupted for some. Night sweats or the hot flashes happening at night, they may be disrupting sleep. Anxiety, a lot of women start feeling anxiety issues around this time. So could be all of these symptoms, which could be because of perimenopause.
Okay. So they have to observe these symptoms. If they
Correct,
are
correct.
seeing those symptoms, then they should again see a doctor.
Right,
And
right.
the first thing what your approach would be to test the hormones.
No, the first thing would be to test and rule out other issues. So suppose there's somebody with hair fall, I would first think of low iron levels or thyroid issues rather than thinking about menopause. So,
Okay.
getting all these basic tests done, check the thyroid, check your iron levels or, your CBC or hemoglobin levels, then check for the vitamin levels. Typically, vitamin D is very low in a lot of women. So that can also cause joint pains and stuff. So B12 could be low, causing fatigue, tiredness. So first of all, ruling out these things is important. We do not need hormone tests at all when we are talking of menopause or diagnosing menopause or perimenopause. So
Okay.
we don't really, especially when we're talking of perimenopause in an age beyond 40 years of age, we do not need hormonal tests to, identify menopause or perimenopause. Basically, because it takes a long time for these hormonal values to change. Secondly, these hormones fluctuate a lot during the perimenopause time. So my results today could be very different from my results tomorrow. They change based on the cycle time also, whether it is your whether you're close to period, whether you've just finished your periods mid-cycle. So your hormones change at this time. Depending on that, also your hormones are fluctuating a lot in your perimenopause times. So in fact, we do not rely on hormones at all when we are trying to treat your perimenopause. When would we like to do hormones? Somebody who's maybe 38 and she hasn't had her periods for a long time. So for that, we would like to see the hormones. We would like to see the hormones which come from the pituitary. So FSH and LH, those hormones are what we check to help us understand whether this lady is close to menopause, perimenopause. But otherwise, it's more of a diagnosis based on symptoms rather than any kind of blood tests.
Yeah, first we should be clear that we don't have other factors, like as you said.
Correct. That's the most important thing. So many times hair is simply because of low iron levels.
Yeah, thyroid, PCOS, all
Thyroid
of
issues,
that
PCOS,
they
yeah.
have to clear. Okay. So also nowadays I'm seeing so many people, young women with endometriosis.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. When
Yeah,
we
yeah,
spoke, you said yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Can you elaborate on what is endometriosis and what are the symptoms?
Yeah, yeah. So endometriosis is simply talking, you have a lining which develops inside the uterus every month, which the woman is shedding. Now, endometriosis is when the lining inside the uterus goes and deposits elsewhere. So it deposits outside the uterus in the pelvic areas. That is when it is called as endometriosis. If it deposits itself in the wall of the uterus, it's called as adenomyosis. Typical example is, imagine a room in a house. The paint which is on the inner walls excuse me, the paint on the inner walls of the wall of the room, if it goes outside the room, goes outside and deposits in other areas or other rooms of the house, that is what we call as endometriosis. If that paint goes in between the bricks of the wall itself, that is when we call it as adenomyosis.
Okay.
And excruciating pain is the commonest symptom that endometriosis has. Adenomyosis can give, that is a lining going between the walls of the uterus, that can give rise to heavier bleeding episodes. Again, a lot of pain is also what we find in these women. I mean, if it happens in the early ages, it results into infertility, because whenever you have periods, the lining inside the uterus bleeds and it comes out of the uterus through the vagina. Now, whenever the lady has with endometriosis has periods, those deposits of endometriosis outside the uterus also bleed, but there is no way for that blood to come outside the body. So it stays there. It stays inside the body in the abdominal cavity, which is not supposed to have blood. Blood is only supposed to flow through the arteries and veins. So whenever there is blood at these abnormal places, it irritates the nerves over there, causing pain. It causes collections to be formed over there, which in turn give rise to a lot of adhesions. So you find, the two ovaries on either side sticking to each other, or there could be sticking of the uterus to the wall of the rectum, or where, the intestines, or to the bladder, urinary bladder as well. So all of these adhesions change the anatomy of the pelvic organs, can lead to infertility. There are certain, what do you say, hormones, chemicals released, because of which also fertility can, is affected. So a lot of these, so endometriosis, adenomyosis, both can cause problems in conception as well. So that is why the commonest reason why people come, or the infertility, the commonest reason here is endometriosis. And then again, if patients come to us, if they have severe pain, that is another way we can diagnose endometriosis.
Okay. So there is no other way that they can manage by themselves in endometriosis. If a middle-aged woman faces excessive bleeding or any excruciating pain, the first thing is definitely go to a doctor.
Correct,
Get
correct.
it
Yes.
clear, because it cannot be managed by yourself.
So
And
if it's pain that you can I mean, I always tell. So I had a teacher when I was doing my post graduation. She used to tell our patients that pain सहन करने के लिए कोई medal नहीं देने वाला है. So nobody is going to honor you because, oh, you went through so much of pain. It's not, I mean, a lot of women come and tell me I have so much pain, but I don't take any medications. I mean, why? I say, why don't you take medications? One medication once a month is not harming your kidney, your liver. Like we said, right? Instead of thinking about one medication harming your body, think of the other things you're doing which are harming your body. So
yes,
you
yes.
can stay pain free by taking simple painkillers during your periods, if in case the pain is very severe. Of course, in case of other problems that they have, if they have with endometriosis, we have medications which can reduce endometriosis. And the final, or the final solution for managing this is, of course, surgery, wherein we remove those deposits of endometriosis, we remove all the diseased areas inside the pelvic cavity, and we prevent its recurrence as well.
Correct. So as you rightly said, that people tell they're scared of taking medicines. Even when I see people in my clinic, if they have high BP, I'll tell go and check with your
Correct, correct.
physician. Lifestyle is definitely, I'll help you with that, but you have to see your physician. But they'll tell no, but they'll put medicines. No, no. Once
Correct,
you
correct.
start with the medicines, you have to take it for lifetime. And
So
but the
that's a
ultimate goal
scare
is
that
to,
that people have, right? Right.
yes, yes. It's like two extremes they do. And the ultimate thing is first to reduce the symptoms, which is very important. No
Absolutely.
matter by taking medicines
Yeah,
or whatever.
right.
Yeah.
Whichever way. There's no need for you to go through the pain, basically.
Yeah. So when you said about pain, it's okay. No, as you said, taking antispasmodics, like when you have your cycle, is fine.
It's absolutely fine.
Yeah. Okay. So I do usually tell them that okay, you can go for medicines if you have too much pain, if you can't tolerate, but maybe we can work for on next cycle, not
Correct, correct.
this pain.
Absolutely. Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
maybe it is your deficiencies or your very
Right.
sedentary lifestyle, no activity, those
Correct, correct.
things.
Because
And
I always say this to patients, that a lot of cultures have a ritual in their households that the lady will sit, when she has periods, she will not go into the kitchen, she will not do this, she'll not do that. I always feel that the origin of this practice was giving rest to females when they had their periods. slowly it got into something where, you can't touch things and you can't go close to God, etc. So basically, whenever, if you go back to the old times, kitchen work was a lot of physical work.
Yeah.
Typically I say, starting from getting water, you had to go to the well and draw water from the well.
Correct.
There was no mixer to just churn your chutneys. You had to actually do it yourself with that, I don't know what's it called, that the thing. So there
Yeah.
was a lot of physical work involved in the kitchen. So it was simply something which was used, which was there to give rest to the woman. But in today's world, you cannot probably take that rest every time.
Mm.
So then you have to do something which can help you yourself to relieve that pain in some other ways.
Correct. Uh, and also, like, what about when we talk about menstrual hygiene? Now everybody uses these sanitary napkins. That has been like, we have come to that far by using. But now I
Correct.
see again people talking about using this reusable pads. And
Yeah, yeah.
do you think they are safe?
See, I think it's a lot of, I mean, if you ask me personally, it's a lot of work washing everything and using it again. But again, it's absolutely environment friendly. If you use pads, sanitary pads, the small plastic lining that is used inside, I think it takes a lot of time to decompose, or it's not biodegradable. So environmentally talking, these issues are a lot. And yes, if you want to shift to period panties or these reusable things, is it's something that you can do. But I mean, my solution to that would rather be using a menstrual cup rather than using, I mean, I'm a lazy person, so rather than asking to wash all
Yeah,
of that, I
same
would
with
rather,
me. Yeah.
yeah, I would rather go for a menstrual cup. I really advocate the menstrual cup to everyone, because I think it's something which is, I mean, personally, it has been life changing for me. So I also want others to, use it and be free
Yes.
of all of that,
Definitely. Even when I used first, I thought, why did no one tell me about this
really,
before? It's
really,
like
really,
no leaking, no tension.
nothing, nothing. It's
You actually
absolutely,
forget that you're bleeding. You can see
exactly what I
that.
tell my patients, that you
Yeah.
literally forget that you have periods. It's
And
literally that
washing and everything,
comfortable.
sometimes we may miss on the hygiene part. We might not dry the reusable
Correct,
panty or
correct. So
whatever well, and it may breed some
I personally think it could be quite messy.
yeah.
So I would say, rather than that, if you I mean, the reason why you're going for it is important. So if you want to be environment friendly, absolutely, I agree with you on that. So a menstrual cup is a
Yeah.
better option than using a reusable.
Like if they are really scared to use the cup, then fine. Those
Yeah,
things are
yeah, yeah.
okay. But
Maybe for younger girls for whom it is difficult to use a menstrual cup, very early on, then maybe these could be something. But again, for younger girls, washing all of this could be a difficult thing for them to do as well.
correct,
So,
correct,
to each his own. But I would, if somebody asks me that, I would rather prefer a menstrual cup to anything
correct.
anything
Yeah,
else. Again, talking about this, again, a question which comes is, can unmarried girls use menstrual cups? Absolutely, they can. We are here in 2025. The hymen being intact and all these things are not really a prerequisite of, or I mean, that it's not a test for girls any longer. So often girls lose their hymens even during sports activities as well. So for younger girls, it's difficult for them to manipulate, use, etc. So I would recommend for younger girls. But for a little older girls, maybe after 18 could be like a benchmark that people could use.
yeah. Hmm.
Course, depends from person to person. But if not really immediately after menarche, a little later, or when the girl is herself comfortable using them, I would recommend even younger girls, unmarried girls, girls who are not sexually active, also to use menstrual cups. It's not very difficult to use. It's not something which is they may not be able to use. So I would also recommend it for younger girls as well, or unmarried girls as well.
Okay. Also, what do you recommend everyone to take HPV vaccines, or what else they can take?
Definitely. So two things really, really important. One is HPV vaccines, because yes, they are available today, and they have been. So when this came up in the beginning, it's Gardasil 4 has been there since 2006. So since when it came around that time, people were a little skeptical. It's a new vaccine. Should we use it? Of course, it came out after the requisite tests were done. But now, 2006 to 2025. So we know it is absolutely safe. We know that it does not cause any kind of adverse effects. So I definitely recommend it to everybody who's coming. The younger the age when you take it, the better it is, because the immunity that develops is way better than what develops later on. That is one. Secondly, that's a time when you haven't been exposed to the virus as yet. So it's a better time for your body to develop the immunity rather than after you being exposed to the virus. Now, with that, the everybody, probably you and me and everybody who's listening, everybody has had HPV infection sometime in their life. Those who are sexually active, but it's like a common cold infection. So even if you have the infection, the body takes care of it. There are certain high risk viruses which slowly cause changes in the cells of the cervix, which lead to cervical cancer. So and that process takes some 10-20 years.
Okay.
So yes, we've all had these infections. So, but then when we take the vaccine is typically directed against these high risk viruses, which help us to build a better immunity. One. And second and most important thing is there are people who come and say, I don't need a pap smear because I've taken the vaccine. No, we still recommend the same kind of screening for cervical cancer, which is by doing a pap smear once every 3 years after the age of 30 onwards. So even if you've taken the vaccine, you still have to get the pap smear done every 3 years.
So between what age group can this vaccine be taken?
So this you can start from younger girls of from 9 years onwards. So there are two types of vaccines. So we have Gardasil 9, we have Gardasil 4. We also have Cervavac, which is our Serum Institute of India's vaccine. So for younger girls, we can give both Gardasil. All the three vaccines can be given. So till the age of 15 years, 2 doses are enough, 6 months apart. After the age of 15, we need 3 doses to be given. And from 0 months, then 0, 2, and 6. So like you take it in January, then you take the next dose in March, and then the third dose is taken in June. So 6 months from the first dose. So that is how you take these vaccines. So you can start them as early as 9 years of age. There is a talk of it being a part of the national immunization schedule also very soon. Cervavac, which is there, which also may come in, so that all the girls will also be taking the vaccine. This can also be taken by boys, and that is because one, HPV also causes certain cancers in males, which are some penile cancers, and some cancers of the head and neck are also caused by HPV, or they're also responsible for these cancers. That is one. Second thing, when the male also has the vaccine, it also prevents that the infection to spread further. So that is also going to help to decrease the incidence of cervical cancer in the society as a whole as well. So young boys up to 9 to 15 years of age can take Gardasil 9, and up to 26 years of age, from 9 to 26, can also take Cervavac as vaccine as well.
Okay.
In the same dosage.
Taken by women up to age of 40?
Up to age of 45. 45.
45. Okay. That's a good thing. Yeah, this has to be educated even more.
Yes, yes. People need to be aware of this a little bit more, because I mean, look at the irony, the most common cancers in females are breast cancer and cervical cancer. And both of these can literally be prevented by early diagnosis or early, and getting, I mean, for cervical cancer, it's even the pre-cancerous lesions that you can diagnose before it turns into cancer. So why should such a cancer be the second most common cancer in females?
Correct. What about breast cancer? Like I heard like there is also some vaccine for
So
that.
there's no vaccine for breast cancer as yet, because the reason why we have a vaccine for cervical cancer is because we now know that this particular virus causes cervical cancer. Unfortunately, nothing like that for breast cancer. The reasons are very different for breast cancer. So what can help prevent breast cancer is a monthly self breast examination. So typically around the 7th or 8th day of the month after your periods is when we advise this, because it's a good time when the breasts aren't lumpy, there's no pain, there's no tenderness, etc. So feel the breasts, both of your breasts, with the flat of your hand. Look at yourself. So typically after a bath, maybe look at yourself in the mirror, see for the size of both the breasts, see for whether there is any kind of skin change on the breasts. And when I say size, it's absolutely normal to have two breasts of different sizes. The change in the size is what you have to catch early. Any kind of skin changes on the breast, and you can feel the breast with both your hands, the opposite hand, and see if you can feel any kind of lump. That you can do every month. Once a year, an examination by a clinician, by a doctor, is what we recommend. And beyond the age of 40, we recommend a mammogram to be done once a year or once every 2 years.
Okay.
A lot of scared
Mammogram,
about the mammogram because of, it's being an X-ray. So it's also exposure to X-rays, but the X-ray exposure is less than that in a chest X-ray as well.
correct.
Absolutely safe to get it done.
Yeah, mammogram, like after which age, like they have
40, after 40.
Especially after menopause, they have to.
Yeah, but I would say more, not even menopause. Typically after 40, you start doing that. And why 40? Because typically before 40, your breasts are too dense. So it's difficult to identify any lesions in the breast before that, which is why after 40 is a good time to get your mammograms done.
Okay, fine. As we've spoken about, I think different issues that women face throughout their lifetime. The only thing now we have to speak is about pregnancy.
Yeah,
Definitely, it is a different journey for different people.
correct.
Like, can you say like anything common with your patients and difference between this vaginal delivery and C-section? Is it safe? These things.
See, different issues can come up during your pregnancy. Common things which we see are high blood pressure or gestational diabetes is what we see. Early pregnancy, some I would say harmless kind of things, but very troublesome kind of things which happen is that early nausea and vomiting that women have during pregnancy, the early 3 to 4 months of pregnancy. Again, multiple issues are there, but all of those issues are manageable. All of those issues are treatable when you look at it at the right time. Again, C-section and normal delivery. I think we should change the definition of normal delivery and C-section now. So we should just call it operative delivery and normal delivery. So even if you have, suppose there's a breech baby, so the head is up and the legs are down, and you have a C-section for that reason, there's no reason for it to be called as abnormal delivery. That's also a mode of delivery. So people talk about too many deliveries getting done by C-sections, and shouldn't be there and all that. But they fail to see how many lives we have saved because of that.
Yes,
the maternal mortality as well as the neonatal mortality rate has significantly reduced since the time when all of these delivery methods are available for us. We prefer not to take a lot of risk at the just for the quest of having a normal delivery. So very often, amongst us doctors also, we say that when we have done a difficult vaginal delivery, it's just that we are happy that we've done a difficult vaginal delivery, but at the risk of whose life, So rather than that, what I tell my patients is, what they say, jacha bacha surakshit. So the mother and the child has to be happy, has to be safe, and the delivery process or that whole, that whole labor pain and everything, it has to be comfortable and happy, as a happy remembrance for the mother, and not, oh my God, I had so much pain that time.
correct.
Typically, they say that you forget about the pain, but just because of that, doesn't mean that you give unnecessary pain to the lady as well. It has to be something which the lady should remember nicely. So whether it is normal delivery, whether it is
The decision should be left on doctor seeing the complications.
Correct. Absolutely. And again, even in normal delivery, I always, urge the lady to go in for epidural analgesia if she wants to. Because, see, today the lady will have 2 to 3 maximum births. People typically want to stop after 2 to 3. So or sometimes people have only one child. So that one experience has to be a happy experience for you. So why do you want to bear the pain? Enjoy your process of delivery in whichever way you can. So
Correct.
of course it's a doctor and the patient's joint decision which has to be taken throughout the delivery process as well.
Yeah, we can normalize the thing that C-section is also completely fine. It's no.
Again, C-section is fine if it's done for a correct indication. There are a lot of times when C-sections are done for unindicated purposes, which of course I'm against. because it should not be, I mean,
Whenever
just because
possible, you should always
whenever possible.
prefer
Yeah, yeah.
normal
You
delivery.
know, if people, common people have this thing against doctors ki C-section से ज़्यादा पैसे मिलते हैं इसके लिए, we do, but it is also a lot of risk for us as well. So
Correct.
it's not, a normal delivery is definitely much more simpler for the doctors also to do. So we also definitely want to go for a normal delivery. It's never
Hmm.
about I don't think anybody thinks about the money when we are
Correct.
thinking of a lady's life and the child's life and the safety of the child and the mother.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Unindicated deliveries, definitely no. But whatever indicated, yes, sometimes you have to think of it in a way that it is saving your life.
So majorly, it is very important to also trust the doctor
Yeah.
that they're taking the best decision for us.
Correct. Yeah.
As you said, like number of lives saved are also like too many, right? Yeah.
Too many. Yeah.
Nowadays, I also see people going for this aquatic delivery,
Yeah, waterbathing.
water
Waterbathing is
birthing.
something which is makes the pain go away quite a lot. And it's a very natural way of delivering as well.
Yeah, there are
Not
many natural birthing centers.
Yes,
Like,
but not many hospitals have waterboarding available as yet. But wherever it is available, I think it's a beautiful way. Again, it has to be something which you enjoy.
yeah,
And so that's why if it's something that you want, I think it's a beautiful way to deliver your child.
yeah. But
Yeah.
only thing is you should have supervision of professionals.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to end with, like, majorly, like, what are the few tips you suggest to your patients? It might be lifestyle changes or foods they should eat, anything like that.
I think I would say just go for women who are maybe around their 40s like me, they will understand. I urge them to go back 30 years in their life, think of what they were eating and eat similar kind of foods, and teach their children also to eat those kind of foods. So when we were younger, all of these things with all those chips and wafers and fried stuff and all that, it was, I mean, we hardly knew about, we hardly had all of those things. So I think getting back to your natural real foods is something that we should do, especially for us in India. We have such a beautiful food culture, so why are we leaving that and going behind something which is unhealthy from the western world? So that is what I would urge people, that eat as much as local, eat what your I mean, how Rujita Divekar says, I really love her lines when she says that eat what your dadi ate. So
Correct.
that's really important, to eat those kind of foods. And I think if all of us get back to healthy eating, a lot of diseases would kind of disappear from today's
Yeah.
this thing.
The basic thing is just go back and like eat your home cooked meals. What
Absolutely.
is traditional and local for you?
Yes,
Even
yes.
when people just randomly start with seed cycling.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have heard. Yes. So,
Yeah. So
so yes, just yesterday a patient asked me, should I go for seed cycling? I said, if seed cycling is going to help you to eat those sunflower seeds and sesame seeds and all those seeds, please go for it, because you will eat healthy with that this thing. You
correct.
know, and see I mean, see, seed cycling is not a allopathic this thing concept, but I mean, every seed or every food rather has its own qualities.
Correct.
So if you can utilize those qualities of the food
Yes.
in a nice way, why not go for it? Definitely you should go for it.
Yeah.
See, I
Yeah.
mean, when I was a child, I remember we always had this sesame chutney, which was there, which we always had with our foods. Today it's like generally sabzi roti khao bhago office, it's something like that people do.
We
So
don't have time to make an extra chutney or something.
exactly. So
Yes.
now if you're eating those sesame seeds because of seed cycling, please go for it.
Yes. So anything which is helping you to eat healthy, then definitely that is a good thing. And some people also like, but what I tell them is don't overcomplicate your life.
I was just going to say that, yes.
Like drinking this juice in the morning, on Monday, this thing.
Yeah.
Also, like that cycle syncing is become too much. Like I have to do this exercise at this cycle of the month. And do you think that will cause impact?
See, I think it's again like you said, right? You're overcomplicating your own life. So typically, it's very simply saying, listen to your body. People
Correct.
ask, should we exercise during periods? Is it allowed, or is it medically safe? I say, listen to your body. If you are feeling drained out, if you're having pain,
Correct.
rest for that day. But if you're feeling okay, then go ahead and exercise.
Correct. First, think of exercising the other days. You don't.
So true, so true. Then tell me about the period exercise. And
So
then even there are certain, I mean, suppose you're doing yoga. They tell us that if you're close to your periods, don't do asanas which raise your legs above.
yeah, yeah.
See, this is something which the yoga, I mean, whatever those thousands of years ago, those people knew, which was a preventive measure for endometriosis.
Correct, correct.
So some things you should selectively select all of this. We have so much wisdom. We
Yeah.
should just know to use it, correctly without overcomplicating things,
Yeah,
without,
when we
like you said.
overcomplicate, it is just an added stress to our life. Like
Correct, correct.
morning, I have to drink this juice, have to make time for
Yeah,
that, and I tell just eat them. Don't make juice. And
yeah.
when you have PCOS, you don't know which phase of the cycle you are because it's irregular.
So true,
Open
so
your
true.
seed cycle at
How
that.
will you do that? How will
Yeah.
you do that?
Just
Right.
eat some seeds. It's okay. Like
Correct, it's okay.
yeah.
All seeds are going to be healthy, and when you're eating them in a good an appropriate quantity, it's going to be healthy only.
Yeah. Also, I had a patient who was having infertility, and she told her doctor told to eat avocados, and she was actually not too good financially well, and she
Yeah.
was trying
It's
to eat avocados. I said it's okay if you don't eat avocados.
it's
That's
absolutely.
something magic.
So there is something, they for infertility, they say the Greek, the Mediterranean diet is going to be good
Yeah.
because olives, and see, olive oil is expensive. So
Yeah.
for somebody who's spending those extra lakhs on infertility treatment, asking her to also use olive oil is something which is,
Yeah.
rather than that, tell
And
her
the
don't eat
amount of
outside
oil
food.
we use,
Exactly.
if we use olive oil.
And I mean, olive oil is not suitable also for Indian cooking. The kind of tadka we give and the kind of temperatures we
Exactly.
give
Temperature.
resorted to. So that's why making those correct choices, using your wisdom to make those choices is also important.
Yeah, so basically just go back to what you eat at home. Make sure to eat a balanced diet, move well, sleep well.
Right, right, right.
That's the thing to
Yeah,
have good
yeah,
health.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we have covered all the topics
Yes, almost everything.
and it was a very wonderful discussion. There were so many things to learn and know from you.
Thank
And as you said, I think just keeping on postponing my vaccination. I should go and get.
You should do that. Yes, you should
Yeah.
take the vaccination.
So I hope whoever is watching this and also listening to us takes those steps, as you rightly highlighted, even about self-examination or just
Yeah,
understanding and listening to your body, which is the first thing,
first thing.
correcting your lifestyle and all of that.
So
Half of the problems will get fixed.
solve there itself.
Yeah. And even if it doesn't, there are doctors who
Yeah.
are there to help.
Yeah.
So nothing to worry about.
Right.
Many of things are definitely manageable, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. If you have any questions, like someone is there, do you have any questions? You can quickly
Please
ask.
ask.
We'll wind up.
I think I just you wanna this thing in comment and chat.
Yeah, I think there's no questions for now. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ameya. It's wonderful talking to you.
It was a great chat that we had.
Yeah, you can ask.
Yeah, please ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much for this webinar. I would like to know, secondary pregnancy, someone who has had a child before was trying to conceive and is currently in 40 years. And
Sorry, I didn't get you. Can you please repeat?
I said a patient who is currently 40 years old but has previously had a child, that's the secondary pregnancy. I would like to know, what are the chances of improving this patient outcome in conceiving after 16 years?
So I think first of all, it's important for us to understand where the patient stands today, or where you stand today, where fertility is concerned. So certain tests which can help us to understand that. One is the test called as AMH, which will help us to have a basic idea about your fertility potential or the ovarian reserve. Of course, it's not like a black and white test which can definitely say whether you can or cannot get pregnant. Other thing is looking at the sonography on the second day of your periods, looking at the ovaries to understand how many follicles you have, what is the ovarian reserve that you have. That is something which can help us understand the potential for that person to get pregnant. And then again, like we spoke of, right, a good lifestyle. See, because age is literally a number. Somebody who's 38 or whatever, 37 could be unfit, and somebody who's 42 could be fit enough and can easily conceive a child. So it all depends on your health. It depends on these things. And sometimes not even on health. Sometimes it is more of a hereditary thing where your ovarian reserve or these things depend on your heredity or your genetics as well. So looking at these things can help us to get a fair idea of what is the potential for that person to have a child or conceive again.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you for asking the question. I just missed about the AMH levels, which is
Right.
number one thing, like people of especially like 30s, because everyone is getting married very late and they want to check. And
Correct.
thank you for doing this. And also, I want to speak about egg freezing in a very short.
Yeah, actually. So see, AMH is not like a, what do you say, not a black and white test, that it cannot always 110% talk about your this thing, ovarian reserve. But it can help us to have a fair idea is one. Secondly, egg freezing is something which I do recommend for women who, in whatever phase of life, right? They do not want to conceive right now. They're not sure about conceiving at all. So egg freezing is something which can help you. It's a good idea to get your eggs frozen whenever you have a good quality of eggs, so that it will be easier for you to conceive later on. So for somebody who's for multiple reasons, I think egg freezing is something which we have it available. So I think it's something which all of us, whoever requires it, can definitely use. It's absolutely safe, and it's really good if you do not want to conceive at an early age for whatever reasons.
Okay. What could be the cost for egg freezing? Like it
Oh, that
depends on
depends. Yeah, depends
how many
from lab
years
to
they
lab, of
took.
course. But typically, different labs have different ranges. But it basically involves stimulating your ovaries, collecting those eggs, and keeping them frozen. So the cost of those medicines plus collecting those eggs can vary from, I don't know,
Different
from
labs.
around 2 to 3 lakhs probably. And every lab will have different charges for keeping those eggs, because you need those specific temperature conditions, those air this thing conditions also when you're preserving those eggs. So even that definitely it requires a specific condition. So that also requires some kind of
It depends on how long we choose to
maintain.
freeze.
That also depends. The
The
maintenance cost is always
amount cost of it will change.
correct.
And even we have technologies like IVF and
So if you have frozen your eggs, and then when you want to plan a pregnancy, IVF is the only option that you
correct.
can go for. So you
And it's
utilize the eggs.
according to you, is it absolutely safe to go
Yeah,
to?
absolutely safe. Absolutely safe.
Okay. So with that, now we have so much of technologies like
Yeah,
even though people are having infertility, also the treatments for infertility have been
are very
evolved
good. Yeah.
very much.
And
So
it's very easy for us to say, no, your ovarian reserve is low, so you conceive right away. But it may not fit in that lady's or that couple's life plan.
yeah,
So it's absolutely okay to go for these this help which science has given us. Why
correct.
not?
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of
Yes.
many. We touched all topics
Yes.
today, and that was a really great discussion. If anybody else has any question, or you can just write any questions to us, and
Right.
we'll
Right.
try
Get
to
answers
answer
later as well.
as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Also, this will be available, this video will be available on YouTube. So you can just put down in the comments there, and then we'll answer as and when possible.
Sure.
And Dr. Ame, you are also available on Instagram. So
I am.
I think,
I am YouTube as well.
Instagram and YouTube as well. So definitely you can reach out to her on her platforms and get as much as knowledge and guidance as possible. Thank you so much. Have a happy evening. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor.
All right. Thank you.
Pleasure to have you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.